The humans did not stop. The ashen plains stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a wasteland of cracked stone, boiling pits, and creatures adapted to kill anything that dared cross it. Varkan scouts shadowed the newcomers from a safe distance, reporting every movement back to the War Council. They expected to see signs of exhaustion or panic or at least caution. But the humans moved like predators who had walked these lands their whole lives. Their formation was tight, their eyes hidden behind reflective visors, constantly scanning their surroundings. They were not sightseeing. They were hunting. The Varkans sent a team of warriors to intercept them, hoping to force a meeting and gauge the strangers' intentions. 6 of the Empire's finest soldiers emerged from the jagged cliffs, their armor reinforced to withstand the acidic winds, their weapons designed to tear through the hides of the Ashen Plains' deadliest beasts. They positioned themselves directly in the humans' path, blocking their way. The humans halted, but showed no sign of alarm. The leader, taller than the rest, with a black stripe painted across the helmet, stepped forward. The Varkans had prepared their most formal greeting, expecting the humans to at least hesitate in the face of the galaxy's most feared warriors. But instead, the human leader's voice came through a translator with a calm, steady tone. "You must be the locals," he said. "We're here to see the dangerous parts of your planet. Which way should we go?" The Varkans exchanged looks. No outsider had ever spoken like this before. Normally, the first words were pleas for safe passage, for protection, or for help returning to space. But these humans were asking for danger. One Varkan captain narrowed his eyes. "You think you can survive here, even we do not walk far without armor?" The human's visor tilted slightly, as if studying him. "Armor?" he said. "We've been breathing your air since we landed. We fought bigger things than what we've seen so far. You're holding back the real challenges, aren't you?" Before the captain could reply, a distant rumble echoed across the plains. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Both species turned toward the sound. Shape rose over the horizon, hulking predator covered in bone-like plating. With 6 legs and eyes that glowed in the storm's light, it was a SCIFI beast, one of the Ashen Plains' most feared hunters. The Varkans instinctively reached for their weapons, ready for a fight they knew could cost lives. But the humans didn't wait. They broke formation, moving toward the creature. With fluid precision, one unslung the glowing rifle, the other drew a blade short, curved and humming faintly with energy. The SCIFI beast roared and charged. In a blur, the rifle barked once, searing a hole in its armored leg, forcing it to stumble. The one with the blade sprinted forward, ducked under a claw swipe, and drove the weapon up through the beast's throat. The SCIFI beast collapsed with a final hiss, steam rising from its wounds. The entire fight had lasted less than 20 seconds. The Varkans stood frozen. Even among their strongest, bringing down a SCIFI beast was a brutal, costly battle. And these humans had done it as easily as killing a stray pest. The human leader stepped toward the Varkans, his voice still calm. "So, is this the most dangerous part of your planet, or are you hiding something better?" The Varkans didn't answer immediately. Pride demanded they challenge such arrogance. But deep in their instincts, something older than pride whispered. A warning, these were not normal off-worlders. The captain finally spoke. "If you want danger, we'll take you to the Crimson Canyon. No outsider has ever returned from there alive." The human leader tilted his head slightly, as if considering the offer. "Good," he said. "Then let's see it." They traveled together for hours. The Varkans kept their distance, watching for any sign of weakness. But the humans moved. Tirelessly, they crossed fissures by leaping, climbed jagged spires with bare hands, and navigated shifting ground without hesitation. Even the ashen winds, which could strip skin from bone, seemed to roll harmlessly off their armor. When night fell, the Varkans set up camp, building reinforced shelters to block the acidic rain. The humans set up their own strange, sleek tents that unfolded from small packs, sealing with an invisible energy field. Inside, they lit no fires, made no noise, and kept constant watch, as if expecting an attack. The Varkan captain tried to question the human leader, but the answers only deepened the mystery. The humans spoke of their homeworld, a place with oceans that could swallow continents, forests filled with venomous predators, storms that could shatter mountains, and winters cold enough to freeze flesh in seconds.
Ow.
They spoke of wars that spanned centuries, fought not just against nature, but against each other. They spoke with no arrogance, only with the tone of those stating simple facts. By dawn, the Varkans were more unsettled than they had been in decades. The humans were strong, but their real danger wasn't in their strength. It was in how normal they found this world. To them, the Ashen Plains were not a death trap. They were just another place to explore. As the group approached the jagged cliffs of the Crimson Canyon, a low, unnatural howl echoed from deep within. The Varkans stiffened. The sound belonged to something that even they did not hunt. Something that ruled this land when the Varkans themselves were still prey. The human leader turned toward the sound. And though his visor hid his face, the tone of his voice carried a kind of anticipation that made the Varkan's blood run cold. Finally, he said, "Something interesting." The humans did not stop. The Ashen Plains stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a wasteland of cracked stone, boiling pits. And creatures adapted to kill anything that dared cross it. Varkan scouts shadowed the newcomers from a safe distance, reporting every movement back to the War Council. They expected to see signs of exhaustion, or panic, or at least caution. But the humans moved like predators who had walked these lands their whole lives. Their formation was tight, their eyes hidden behind reflective visors, constantly scanning their surroundings. They were not sightseeing. They were hunting. The Varkans sent a team of warriors to intercept them, hoping to force a meeting and gauge the strangers' intentions. 6 of the Empire's finest soldiers emerged from the jagged cliffs. Their armor reinforced to withstand the acidic winds, their weapons designed to tear through the hides of the Ashen Plains' deadliest beasts. They positioned themselves directly in the humans' path, blocking their way. The humans halted but showed no sign of alarm. The leader, taller than the rest, with a black stripe painted across the helmet, stepped forward. The Varkans had prepared their most formal greeting, expecting the humans to at least hesitate in the face of the galaxy's most feared warriors. But instead, the human leader's voice came through a translator with a calm, steady tone. "You must be the locals," he said. "We're here to see the dangerous parts of your planet." "Which way should we go?" The Varkans exchanged looks. No outsider had ever spoken like this before. Normally the first words were pleas for safe passage, for protection, or for help returning to space. But these humans were asking for danger. One Varkan captain narrowed his eyes. "You think you can survive here? Even we do not walk far without armor." The human's visor tilted slightly as if studying him. "Armor?" he said. "We've been breathing your air since we landed. We fought bigger things than what we've seen so far. You're holding back the real challenges, aren't you?" Before the captain could reply, a distant rumble echoed across the plains. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Both species turned toward the sound. A shape rose over the horizon, a hulking predator covered in bone-like plating, 6 legs and eyes that glowed in the storm's light. It was a SCIFI beast, one of the Ashen Plains' most feared hunters. The Varkans instinctively reached for their weapons, ready for a fight they knew could cost lives, but the humans didn't wait. 2 broke formation, moving toward the creature. With fluid precision, one unslung the glowing rifle, the other drew a blade short, curved and humming faintly with energy. The SCIFI beast roared and charged. In a blur, the rifle barked once, searing a hole in its armored leg, forcing it to stumble. The one with the blade sprinted forward, ducked under a claw swipe, and drove the weapon up through the beast's throat. The SCIFI beast collapsed with a final hiss, steam rising from its wounds. The entire fight had lasted less than 20 seconds. The Varkans stood frozen. Even among their strongest, bringing down a SCIFI beast was a brutal, costly battle. And these humans had done it as easily as killing a stray pest. The human leader stepped toward the Varkans, his voice still calm. "So, is this the most dangerous part of your planet? Or are you hiding something better?" The Varkans didn't answer immediately. Pride demanded they challenge such arrogance. But deep in their instincts, something older than pride whispered, "A warning These were not normal off-worlders. The captain finally spoke. "If you want danger, it will take you to the Crimson Canyon. No outsider has ever returned from there alive." The human leader tilted his head slightly, as if considering the offer. "Good," he said. "Then let's see it." They traveled together for hours. The Varkans kept their distance, watching for any sign of weakness, but the humans moved tirelessly. They crossed fissures by leaping, climbed jagged spires with bare hands, and navigated shifting ground without hesitation. Even the ashen winds, which could strip skin from bone, seemed to roll harmlessly off their armor. When night fell, Varkans set up camp, building reinforced shelters to block the acidic rain. The humans set up their own strange, sleek tents that unfolded from small packs, sealing with an invisible energy field. Inside, they lit no fires, made no noise, and kept constant watch as if expecting an attack. The Varkan captain tried to question the human leader, but the answers only deepened the mystery. The humans spoke of their homeworld, a place with oceans that could swallow continents, forests filled with venomous predators, storms that could shatter mountains, and winters cold enough to freeze flesh in seconds. They spoke of wars that spanned centuries, fought not just against nature, but against each other. They spoke with no arrogance, only with the tone of those stating simple facts. By dawn, the Varkans were more unsettled than they had been in decades. The humans were strong, but their real danger wasn't in their strength. It was in how normal they found this world. To them, the Ashen Plains were not a death trap. They were just another place to explore. As the group approached the jagged cliffs of the Crimson Canyon, a low, unnatural howl echoed from deep within. The Varkans stiffened. The sound belonged to something that even they did not hunt, something that ruled this land when the Varkans themselves were still prey. The human leader turned toward the sound, and though his visor hid his face, the tone of his voice carried a kind of anticipation that made the Varkans' blood run cold. Finally, he said, "Something interesting." The entrance to the Crimson Canyon was a scar across the land, a gash of black and red stone that seemed to swallow the daylight. The cliffs rose like jagged teeth on either side, their surfaces streaked with the fossilized remains of creatures that had died millions of years ago. The air here was heavier, laced with a faint metallic temps that clung to the tongue. The Varkans knew the taste well. It was the scent of blood, old and new. Even their hardened warriors stepped lightly when they entered this place. Legends told of the canyon's oldest predator, a hunter that had never been captured or killed. It was called the Krexith, a shadow in the rock, a thing so dangerous that even the Empire's strongest warriors refused to speak of it outside these cliffs. The Krexoth did not stalk its prey like lesser predators. It waited, hidden, until its victims were deep within the canyon. Then it struck with speed and strength that defied belief. Those who faced it rarely had time to scream. The Varkan captain, still determined to break the humans' arrogance, told them the truth as they stood before the canyon mouth. "Inside," he said, "is a predator that has ruled here since before our kind learned to walk upright. No one has survived its attack. If you truly believe you can master our world, this is where you will prove it." The human leaders' visor reflected the canyon's shadowy maw. "Good," he said. "We'll start now. No hesitation, no discussion." The humans moved forward in their tight formation, weapons ready, but held low, scanning every shadow. The Varkans followed at a distance, both to watch and to avoid being caught in whatever fate the humans had invited upon themselves. The deeper they went, the more the light faded, swallowed by the canyon walls. Strange, whispering winds wound through the cracks, carrying with them the distant echoes of things moving far below. An hour into the march, first sign of the Krexoth appeared. A boulder the size of a transport had been split clean in half, the edges smooth as glass. Something incredibly sharp had done this, and recently, the Varkans felt their throats tighten. The humans simply noted it, adjusted their path, and kept moving. The canyon narrowed, forcing them into single file. The sound of trickling water echoed from somewhere unseen, but it was wrong, too slow, too heavy. Then one of the human soldiers raised a hand. They had spotted something. A set of claw marks, each longer than a human arm, scored deep into the stone wall. The grooves were fresh, the rock around them still crumbling. The humans crouched, examining the marks, their movements precise and unhurried. One of them tapped the wall twice, as if confirming something to the others. Then they moved on, their pace even slower now. Weapons angled upward as well as forward. The Varkans could feel it now, tooth a weight of being watched. Krexith was close. It struck without warning. From the shadows above, it dropped a monstrous shape of sinew and armored hide, easily 4 meters tall when it unfolded its limbs. Its head was elongated, with a maw filled with rows of serrated teeth. Its eyes glowed faintly red, and each of its 4 clawed arms ended in talons sharp enough to carve through steel. Landed between the humans and the Varkans, the ground. Shaking under its weight, the Varkans froze, their instincts screaming to flee. But the humans didn't move. The Krexoth roared, the sound reverberating off the canyon walls. It lunged, claws flashing toward the human leader. In a motion too fast for the Varkans to follow, the leader sidestepped, letting the claws scrape uselessly against the ground. At the same time, the rifleman fired twice, 2 precise energy bursts, each hitting a joint in the creature's front. Limbs, the Krexeth stumbled, howling, but its momentum carried it forward. Another human, the one with the curved blade, charged in, ducking under a swipe that would have torn them in half. They slashed once, and a deep line of smoking flesh opened across the creature's underbelly. The Krexoth recoiled, but before it could regroup, the leader drew a secondary weapon, a compact, wide-barreled device and fired directly into its open maw. The blast lit the canyon like a flare, and the Krexoth collapsed, its body convulsing once before going still. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. The Varkans stared at the fallen beast. It had ruled the canyon. For as long as anyone could remember, entire squads had died facing it, yet these humans had brought it down in less than a minute. And they hadn't just killed it, they had worked together with surgical precision, each movement calculated, each strike placed with purpose. The human leader looked at the carcass, then at the Varkan captain. "Is this the worst you have?" he asked. The captain swallowed hard. The humans didn't gloat. They simply began examining the body, taking samples, photographing the claws and teeth, and discussing the anatomy in low-clipped voices. They spoke not as if they had just survived a deadly encounter, but as if they had completed a routine hunt. The Varkans followed them out of the canyon, their thoughts heavy. Pride had always told them that they were unmatched, that their world's dangers made them the strongest. But watching the humans today had forced a terrible new thought into their minds. If humans could come here, to the Crimson Canyon, and kill what the Varkans feared most, then maybe this planet was no longer theirs alone. And as they emerged back into the ashen daylight, one truth settled like a stone in the captain's gut: this was only the beginning. The humans had not come to survive. They had come to test themselves. Now, if this was their starting point, what would they seek next? The Crimson Canyon had been silent since the death of the Krexoth, but silence on a death world was never a sign of safety. The Varkans knew this truth well, yet the humans walked as if they were strolling through a familiar hunting ground. They carried the beast's samples in sealed containers, discussing their findings in low voices that the Varkans could barely follow. What unsettled the captain most wasn't the fact that they had killed the Krexoth, it was the way they spoke about it, as if they were cataloging a new species for a field guide rather than celebrating the destruction of a legend. The journey out of the canyon should have been the end of the trial, but the humans showed no interest in leaving. The leader, his visor still hiding his eyes, turned to the captain with a calm request. "Where's the real danger?" he asked. The captain felt his jaw tighten. The Krexoth was the real danger, he replied. But even as he said it, a memory stirred one he had tried to bury. There was another predator, older than the Krexoth, one that even the Empire rarely acknowledged. It didn't stay in one place. It roamed across the wastelands, appearing without warning and leaving nothing alive in its wake. The few survivors of its attacks spoke of a blur of speed, a shadow that cut through squads before they could even raise their weapons. The Varkans called it the Night Maw. He had no intention of leading the humans to it. But fate had other plans. By the time they reached the canyon's mouth, the wind had shifted. A low vibration hummed through the ground, faint at first, then growing stronger. The captain felt his stomach drop. He had felt this before. The Night Maw was close. The humans noticed it too. The leader's head tilted slightly, his body language sharpening. "Something's tracking us," he said quietly to his team. They shifted formation without a word, weapons rising in unison, eyes scanning every shadow and ridge. The first attack came from above. A streak of black and silver tore through the air, slamming into one of the canyon walls and ricocheting off. With impossible agility, the Varkans barely caught a glimpse of elongated limbs built for speed, claws that glinted like blades, a head shaped like a spear point, with rows of teeth that caught the dim light. Then it vanished again, faster than their eyes could follow. The humans didn't panic. They pivoted as one, rifles tracking the movement. A flash to the left, 3 shots rang out. A blur to the right, a grenade rolled into the shadow just as the Night Maw pounced, the blast forcing it into full view for the first time. It was wrong. Not just a predator, but something that looked engineered. Its muscles were corded with fiber-like strands, its hide armored in overlapping plates, and its eyes were a deep, burning crimson. It didn't roar. It didn't need to. Its speed was its terror. It lunged again, this time going straight for the human's leader. But instead of dodging, the leader stepped forward, catching its momentum with a brutal shoulder strike that knocked it off balance for a fraction of a second. Just enough time for 2 rifle bursts to hammer into its legs. The creature shrieked, twisting away, its movements almost too fast to track even when injured. The Varkans had seen elite squads wiped out in seconds by this thing, yet here the humans were, turning the hunt around. They split into 2 teams, one drawing its attention, the other flanking wide. The Night Maw darted toward the distraction, claws slicing the air, but it was met with a wall of firepower plasma bursts, concussive grenades, and blade strikes in rapid succession. The final blow came when the leader vaulted onto the creature's back, driving a shock spear into the base of its skull. The Night Maw convulsed once, then collapsed, its body twitching before going still. Silence. Again, this time, it was heavier. The humans regrouped, breathing steady, scanning the area for more threats. The leader looked down at the corpse. "Fast," he said simply. But not fast enough. The Varkans didn't speak. They had no words. The Night Maw was supposed to be unstoppable, a nightmare from which no one woke. And yet, in less than 2 minutes, it was dead at the humans' feet. It was here, in this moment, that the Varkans' perception shifted entirely. This wasn't just another strong species. This wasn't luck. This was something far worse for the galaxy. These humans weren't just surviving Deathworld predators. They were thriving against them. They sought them out. They studied them. They learned how to kill them, not for defense, but for sport, for testing themselves. It's for proving something to the universe. As they left the canyon behind, dragging the Night Maw's corpse with them, the captain couldn't shake the question that now gnawed at the edges of his mind. If this was what humans could do in a single day on a world they had never seen before, what would they be capable of once they learned its every secret? And more importantly, what would they do with that knowledge? The Ashen Plains were dangerous in the daylight, but when the storms came, they turned into something far worse. The Varkans called it the Shatter Season, a period when violent weather swept across the land without warning. The air would grow heavy, the ground would hum, and then the world would dissolve into chaos. Lightning, not of white or yellow, but deep violet, would strike the ground in bursts that split stone. Acidic rain would fall in sheets, eating through metal in minutes. Winds howled strong enough to lift a warrior off his feet and hurl him into the jagged cliffs. The Varkans had survived generations of these storms by building reinforced bunkers deep beneath the ground. When the first signs appeared, a strange, electric taste in the air, sudden stillness, every living thing on the plains sought shelter. No one, not even the most fearless hunter, stayed outside when the sky turned black. The signs came now. The humans had been moving steadily back toward the Varkan settlement. The Night Maw's corpse dragged behind them when the captain noticed the change. The wind had died. The scent of the air had shifted. The sky, once the sickly orange of the plains, began to darken from the horizon inward. He stopped in his tracks. "We need to find shelter," he said. Now, the human leader didn't even look up. "What kind of storm?" "The kind that kills everything it touches," the captain replied. "We'll take you to a bunker." "If we run now, we might not necessary," the human cut in. "We have our own." The Varkans watched as the humans moved with sudden urgency, unloading small black cases from their packs. With a series of sharp clicks, each case unfolded into a strange skeletal frame. Energy flickered along the edges, forming translucent walls that shimmered like glass, but bent the light around them. The structures anchored themselves into the cracked stone with short, brutal bursts of force, digging deep. Within minutes, 5 domes stood in the open, each one large enough to house a human squad. The Varkans stared. These were not bunkers. They were portable fortresses. The first strikes came just as the humans sealed themselves inside. Lightning exploded against the plains, the purple glow casting long, violent shadows. The wind roared like a living thing, flinging shards of stone through the air at speeds that could slice flesh. Acid rain hammered the domes, hissing and steaming as it slid harmlessly off the energy shields. Inside, the humans sat calmly, watching. Through the barrier, as the storm tore the world apart, the Varkans huddled in the entrance of a shallow cave nearby, their armor already pitted from the rain. They could barely see through the storm, but through the sheets of acid and flashes of lightning. They caught glimpses of the humans calm, methodical, even bored. Hours passed. The storm raged harder, and in the distance, something massive moved through it. A predator adapted to hunt in the chaos. Its outline was huge, with spined ridges along its back and claws that left deep gouges in the stone. Most creatures hid during shatter season. This one hunted. The Varkans froze, knowing the humans were exposed, but before they could shout a warning, the predator struck. It slammed against one of the domes with the force of a falling boulder. The energy barrier flared, but the predator didn't stop. It circled, slamming again, jaws snapping, claws sparking against the shield. Inside, the humans moved quickly, not in panic but in practiced routine. One slid open a small port in the dome and leveled a Weapon A long-barreled rail rifle that hummed with building energy. The shot tore through the storm like a spear of light, punching clean through the predator's chest. The creature collapsed instantly, sliding down the dome's side before being swept away by the wind. The humans sealed the port and returned to whatever they had been doing, as if nothing had happened. By the time the storm finally broke, the plains were unrecognizable. The ground was littered with broken rock, the air still stung with the metallic temps of acid, and deep scorch marks cut across the land where lightning had struck. The Varkans emerged from their cave, armor damaged, exhausted from holding their position for so long. The humans stepped out of their domes as if they had simply waited out a light rain. Their armor was untouched, their weapons clean, their expressions at least as much as the Varkans could guess unchanged. They began packing up their shelters. With the same casual efficiency they had set them up, reducing the fortresses back to compact cases in minutes. The captain stared at them, his voice low. You stayed out here. Through all of that, the human leader met his gaze. "We've seen worse," it was said without arrogance, without boasting, just a simple truth. And that was what unsettled the captain most. Because if this storm was not the worst the humans had known, then what kind of place had shaped them? The Varkans had always believed their world to be the galaxy's harshest crucible. But as the humans marched forward, seemingly unfazed by the violence they had just endured, the captain began to wonder if perhaps his people had been living in the shadows of a greater, deadlier truth. The Alliance had been uneasy from the beginning, but after the storm, cracks began to spread beneath the surface. The humans had not only survived the shatter season without injury, they had done so with tools the Varkans had never imagined possible. Word spread quickly through the settlement, and soon whispers turned into murmurs and murmurs into open debate. Some called the humans allies, warriors to respect. Others called them a threat. They can face our storms without fear. What else can they face? What else can they survive? The Varkan Council met in secret chambers carved from black stone, the air thick with the scent of burning resin. The leader, Chancellor Caries, stared at the gathered elders, his voice cold. We have welcomed them into our strongholds. We have shown them our land, our weaknesses. Do you not see the danger? We are teaching predators the layout of our nest. An elder clicked his tusks in agreement. If they turn against us, our armies cannot match them. I saw one kill a storm beast with a single weapon shot. Our warriors would need 10 to bring it down. Caries leaned forward. Then we must act before they see our fear. They must believe we honor them, and when the moment comes, we remove the threat. Plans took shape in shadows. The humans were to be sent on a hunt deep into the Ashen Plains, where old mines and collapsed tunnels formed a labyrinth no outsider could navigate. The official story was that scouts had seen signs of a rare and dangerous predator thereaw, beast whose hide could fetch a fortune in the galactic markets. The truth was simpler. The mines were unstable, the air thin, the creatures within territorial and vicious. And the Varkans knew every path. The humans knew none. The trap would be perfect. At dawn, the captain, none aware of the council's plot, was ordered to guide the humans to the mines. He hesitated, but disobedience was dangerous. The humans accepted the mission without suspicion, though their leader's eyes lingered a moment. Too long on the Varkan escorts, as if sensing something beneath the surface. The journey began under a red sky. Hours passed in silence, the wind whispering through broken stone pillars, until the mines rose, ahead black mouths in the earth, breathing cold air. The Varkans led the way inside, and almost at once the darkness swallowed them whole. Narrow tunnels twisted like the guts of some ancient beast, the walls slick with condensation. Sounds echoed strangely, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes from nowhere at all. It was the kind of place where a warrior's own footsteps could turn against him, sounding like an enemy's approach. The deeper they went, the worse. It became thin air made breathing hard. Shadows shifted as if alive. Then came the first attack. Not from the Varkans, but from the mines themselves. A chittering roar echoed through the darkness, followed by a flash of pale movement. Huge and many-limbed lunged from the ceiling, its claws scraping sparks from stone. The Varkans fell back in panic, but the humans reacted, instantly firing in perfect unison. Shots precise, short bursts of light tearing the creature apart before it could even land. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of dripping water. The captain swallowed hard. The humans didn't even seem winded. The trap was meant to slow them, weaken them. Instead, it was sharpening them. And then it happened, a real betrayal. A narrow tunnel led to an old bridge spanning a chasm. The Varkans crossed first, their armored boots clanging against rusted metal. Halfway across, the lead warrior triggered a hidden charge. The bridge groaned, twisted, and collapsed into the darkness below. The humans had been seconds behind. Any normal soldier would have fallen to certain death. But the humans moved like they had known it was coming. Hooks shot from their belts, embedding into the rock wall, lines locking with a metallic snap. They swung under the falling debris, slamming into the far ledge with controlled impact. One Varkan, who had turned to watch their fall, froze as the humans climbed up over the edge, eyes cold and unblinking. No one spoke. The humans simply adjusted their gear and kept moving. But their pace was different, now quieter, tighter, every movement deliberate. They knew, by the time the group reached the heart of the mines, the Varkans realized the balance of power had shifted. This was no longer a guided hunt. It was a silent test. The humans were no longer following. They were watching. The captain could feel if their gaze was heavy, calculating. Somewhere behind their calm expressions, they were measuring every Varkan in that tunnel, deciding who would live if things turned. And when the mission ended and they stepped back into the sunlight, The humans didn't confront anyone. They didn't speak of the bridge. But as they passed the captain, their leader leaned close, voice low enough for only him to hear. Next time, make it a fair fight. Then they were gone, walking into the red light, leaving the captain's blood cold and the council's fate uncertain. The days after the mines were heavy with silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something coiled, waiting. The humans spoke little, trained more, and kept their eyes always moving. To the Varkans, it was unnerving. To the council, it was dangerous. Rumors spread like smoke how the humans had survived the fall, how they had killed the tunnel beasts with impossible precision, how they had walked out of a death trap without a scratch. Chancellor Carys felt the walls closing in. Fear is a fast-spreading poison, and it had infected the entire stronghold. That fear deepened the night the humans came back from a routine patrol with something that made the Varkans' blood run cold. A captured mercenary from the outer zones. He was battered, bleeding, and terrified. And under questioning, he revealed the truth. He had been paid by someone inside the council to finish what the mines had failed to do. The betrayal was no longer a shadow, it was a blade in the open. The next morning, the humans did not request an audience with the council. They walked into the chamber uninvited, boots echoing against the polished stone floor. Every guard in the room tensed, hands twitching near weapons, but none drew first. The human leader, tall, scarred eyes, the color of steel, placed something heavy on the council table. It was the communicator the mercenary had used. Your plan failed. The human said, voice low but carrying through the chamber. You've shown us what you think of allies. I will show you what humans think of enemies. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was suffocating. The council tried to respond with bluster, threats, even false regret, but the humans had already turned and walked away, as if the conversation was over. That night it began. Not war. Not openly. Something quieter. Deadlier. The humans vanished from the barracks, splitting into teams that moved through the settlement like ghosts. Lights went out in certain sectors. Communications cut off without warning. Storage vaults found open. Their contents gone. Patrols returned missing 2 or 3 soldiers, the survivors swearing they had heard nothing until it was too late. The Varkans searched, but they never found the humans, only their work. A collapsed munitions depot here, destroyed food reserve there. The humans weren't attacking the Varkans directly. They were dismantling them from the inside, piece by piece, until fear did what weapons could not. But the most unnerving thing wasn't what the humans destroyed, it was what they spared. They didn't touch the civilians. They didn't harm the young or the old. The human strikes were surgical, precise, aimed only at the council's power. It was a message. The message was clear. We know exactly where to hit you, and we choose not to hit harder. For now, Chancellor Carys grew desperate. He called an emergency council meeting under full guard, only to find, when he arrived, that the guards had been replaced by humans. No weapons raised, no shouting, just a silent ring of them around the chamber, their faces unreadable. The leader stepped forward again, but this time he didn't put anything on the table. He simply spoke. This ends now. You will never send another knife in the dark against us. You will never decide our worth again. You will trade with us as equals, or we will leave your world burning and walk away without a scratch. The chamber was so quiet that the sound of Carey's own heartbeat seemed deafening in his ears. He wanted to call the bluff, to challenge them, but in the leader's eyes he saw something that froze the thought in his mind: certainty. This wasn't negotiation. This wasn't threat. This was a statement of what would happen. The council voted before the hour was out. The humans were granted free movement, trade rights, and command over joint military operations. To the Varkans, it felt like surrender. To the humans, it was simply survival done the human way. And when they left the chamber, a Varkan soldier, young and curious, dared to ask the human leader why they hadn't just wiped the council out entirely. The human looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "Because fear keeps you still, but respect makes you useful." Then he walked away, leaving the young warrior to realize the most dangerous thing about the humans wasn't their weapons, their speed, or their cunning. It was that they knew exactly when to stop, The Varkans had always believed their world was unmatched in cruelty. The mountains breathed fire in the dry season, the oceans churned with creatures that could swallow a ship whole, and the very soil hid predators that waited for centuries to strike. No outsider had ever lasted more than a week here. It was a truth so ingrained, it had become part of their pride, part of their arrogance. But now, whispers carried through the ports, across the settlements, into the very halls of power whispers, that the humans had done more than survive. They had begun to thrive. At first, the galaxy ignored the rumors. Humans were still a young species in the stars, untested and few in number. They had no vast fleets, no ancient dynasties, no ancestral claim to the great sectors, but the proof came anyway. It came in the form of images grainy, but undeniable, of humans walking the sulfur plains without suits, laughing under red lightning storms, standing beside beasts the size of fortress walls. And the beasts were dead. Other Deathworld species saw these images and understood their meaning. Deathworlders could respect strength, even if it came from outsiders. But what unsettled them wasn't just that humans survived where others couldn't, it was how they adapted. Where most species hid from the planet's fury, the humans studied it, mapped it, used it. They turned the storms into power sources. They trained in the poisonous swamps until they could cross them without a mask. They even tamed smaller predators, using them as scouts. Soon, the Varkans found themselves no longer the unquestioned masters of their own home. The Council tried to frame it as an alliance, but everyone knew the truth: alliances were between equals, and this was something else entirely. The galaxy began to take notice. Traders from neighboring systems came not for Varkan metals or spices, but for human technology forged from Deathworld elements. Mercenaries sought human trainers to teach them survival tactics. Even warlords sent envoys, not with demands, but with offers. The humans accepted some, ignored others, but never bowed. And then came the signal. A long-range distress call. Faint and desperate. From a world known in ancient charts as Clithnine, a place so lethal that even Deathworld veterans called it cursed. No settlement had lasted more than hours there. Varkans would have ignored it, as they always had. But the humans didn't. They prepared without ceremony, packing their strange weapons, their light armor, and their unreadable determination. A few Varkan soldiers joined them, more from curiosity than courage. The journey was short. The landing was worse than any had imagined. Clithnine was a nightmare place, where the ground cracked open into endless pits of fire, where the air shimmered with toxins that stripped flesh, where winged predators blotted out the sun in swarms. The Varkans barely lasted an hour before retreating to the ship. The humans stayed. Days passed. The sky above Clithnine turned from black to red, storms tearing the clouds apart. The Varkans, watching from orbit, expected to see human casualties pile up. Instead, they saw the humans building shelters, hunting the predators, and mapping the lava flows. By the end of the first week, they had a base. By the end of the second, they had cleared an entire valley of threats. And by the end of the month, they had sent a message to the galaxy. It was short, and it carried no arrogance, no threat. Just 3 words. We live here. That was all it took. Every Deathworld species heard it for what it was: a challenge, a declaration, a warning. If humans could tame Clithnine, there was no place in the galaxy beyond their reach. And if there was no place beyond their reach, then there was no species beyond their grasp. The Varkans, watching this unfold, finally understood the truth they had resisted since the first humans set foot on their world. They were no longer the rulers of the deadliest world. They were witnesses to the rise of a species that looked at Deathworlds not as places to be feared, but as places to call home. In the quiet that followed, an old Varkan soldier who had once fought against the humans spoke to a young recruit staring at the broadcast in disbelief. "What happens now?" the recruit asked. The old warrior's gaze never left the screen, where the humans stood under the blackened sky of Clithnine, alive and unyielding now, he said. "Now the galaxy learns what we did, that the deadliest thing in a death world is a human."